started.
Okay.
Okay. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the 2020 TECaN ONTPD Virtual Junior Faculty Career Panel. On behalf of the TECaN Executive Council, we are your moderators for today. So my name is Bree Liberio, and my co-moderator is Allie Sloan. I'm a second-year fellow at the University of Colorado and one of the TECaN regional representatives.
Hello, everyone. I am Allie Sloan. I am in my second year as faculty at the University of Kentucky Children's Hospital. I'm also the TECaN Advocacy Chair. So today we have invited our panelists to answer your most asked questions about the job search from their perspective as junior faculty.
And we have only 1 hour together here, so we'll try to get through as many questions and answers as possible. But given the time restraint, not all panelists will be able to answer every question. For valuable questions that require lengthy answers, the panelists have sent in their answers in a written format, and we'll post the link to that in the chat box. Also, if you have any questions for any of our panelists throughout the session, please type them into the chat box and we'll work to present these questions today. Our panelists can also feel free to utilize the chat feature to provide any additional comments.
So we are lucky today to have our panelists. I'm going to proceed with letting them introduce themselves. Our panelists have allowed us to use everyone's first name, so we'll address everyone on a first name basis today, and we're going to start with Colby.
Perfect. Hi, I am Colby Day. I am just starting my 4th year as faculty at the University of Florida in Jacksonville. I did all of my training, so residency and fellowship at MUSC in Charleston, South Carolina. And I joined my faculty practice in Jacksonville with the plans to really focus the majority of my time on QI as kind of my academic pursuit here. UF Jacksonville is an academic program. We cover several hospitals, so we cover a level 2, but not very frequently. Most of our time is spent at our Florida level 3D, which is a level 4 elsewhere hospital, which is Wolfson Children's Hospital, and where I spend most of my time. We also do spend some of our time at the UF Health Jacksonville NICU, which is a level 3 hospital as well. We don't have fellows here. We have residents and APPs, so we get to do a lot of teaching with them. And then I put some comments there about some of the reasons I joined this practice, but I'm happy to talk more about that in the rest of the portion of this talk. Thanks.
I will advance to the next slide. Maybe. There we go. Go ahead.
Hi, it's such a great chance to be able to talk today. Thanks so much for the invitation. I'm Scott. I am a CHOP lifer. I love neonatology and I love basic science, and I've been lucky enough to find a way to join those two interests by studying the immunology of the uterus and the maternal fetal interface as pregnancy goes on. It's incredibly interesting, and if any of you guys have basic science questions or any science questions afterwards, or how to spin that into a career, be thrilled to talk more about that. I practice most of the time right now with my appointment at CHOP, which is a level 4 with ECMO center and referral center and lots of exciting medicine. And I'm sure you'll hear more about that from Diana as well. It has all sorts of people that we interact with day to day, fellows, residents, the occasional medical student, hospitalists, NPs and PAs. And this is the ideal environment for me because for number one, because of my colleagues, and also because this is the kind of environment that I really need in order to start a lab and be a successful investigator all by myself in the future.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Diana Montoya Williams, and I am one of Scott's colleagues, lucky to be. I did my residency and fellowship training down in Florida as well, Kobe, but in Gainesville, the University of Florida at Gainesville. And it was wonderful, but for many reasons, some of which we might talk about today, or I can talk offline. My family and professional career brought me here to Philadelphia. So I am a clinician scientist. I do both clinical work at CHOP mostly, like Scott just described, although a little bit of clinical time as well at our delivery hospital, which is an adult hospital with the labor and delivery floor and in NICU and newborn medicine as well. And then I spend a great deal of time doing what I'm hoping can be described as health equity science related to perinatal health disparities and social determinants of health, with a big interest and trying to invest a lot of my time in maternal and child health advocacy and public health policy work as well. And so for those reasons, that's also why CHOP has been a really great place to start my career. I came straight from fellowship to this job here, not only because there were amazing opportunities for my husband, who is in medicine as a pediatric orthopedic surgeon here at CHOP, but also because I was really looking for an environment that could give me really strong clinical experiences, research mentorship, and an environment where I could really start to learn and flex my abilities to promote evidence-based policies and advocate for them in legislative ways. And CHOP has this really incredible group of people, what we call a center of excellence here called Policy Lab, where that's really what they do. And it's an incredible multidisciplinary group of people. And I've been able to learn a lot and get a lot of experiences about that part of my career through that environment. Yep.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vilmi, but full name Vilmaris Quiñones Cardona. I am an attending at St. Christopher's Hospital for Children. This is my third year now, starting as an attending at St. Christopher's, and my interests really stem a little bit more in the medical education program leadership, but quality improvement as well as ECMO. So for me, in the job search and looking for that right job for me was a marriage of those three big passion and interest of mine. I'm currently the Associate Program Director for the Neonatal Perinatal Fellowship at St. Christopher's, as well as the Director for Quality Improvement and Patient Safety. And one of the biggest things in terms of clinical is involvement, a very close-knit involvement as an ECMO physician. So it's one of those things where, at least for St. Christopher's, if you're not familiar with it, it is a level 4 NICU as well in Philadelphia. So we have a strong Philadelphia group here as well, ECMO center as well as a fetal center. And we have a combination of medical students from Drexel, College of Medicine, pediatric subspecialty fellows, nurse practitioners, PAs. So our NICU has a hybrid of all the frontline providers. And the reason why I chose academic medicine is really just a huge interest of mine since starting residency. That's one of the things that I felt like I was always gravitating towards. And for me, I really, although I love the delivery service and unit, referral and high specialized care is something that really just, I wake up and I want to do it every day. So that was very important in me choosing my, my first job. As well as getting involvement and starting a really good mentorship program for program leadership and development. So yes, if you have any questions, please feel free.
Hi, I'm Jamil Winter. I work at the University of Minnesota currently. I did my residency and my fellowship training out east at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. And my interests really lie pretty strongly in global child health. I've kind of focused my career around global health. I started working with the clinic in Cambodia during my residency and continue to work with them on their outreach program, kind of focusing on maternal and child nutrition in a really impoverished population that lives in floating fishing villages on a lake in the middle of the country. That's been a fascinating place to work, but at home I also am interested in neonatal resuscitation and am working with a group of folks in our practice to build a teleneonatology service to serve some of our outlying community hospitals that refer to us, as well as to kind of get our own community hospitals that we staff more rapid access to the neonatologist when we're not in-house. So my practice setting is primarily at our level 4 academic NICU at the University of Minnesota. We have 74 beds. We do ECMO in the unit, though our ECMO volume is not that high. Plus we staff 4 level 2 to 3 units in the surrounding community hospitals. There's a group of about 24 of us, so we're a pretty large faculty. We have residents, medical students, and fellows in the main unit, and we have NNPs and PAs at basically all of our sites. I chose this position because the University of Minnesota is a really, really strong global health program. I wanted to be in a place that would support my continued work in Cambodia and other parts of the world. And it just so happens that Minnesota is home. So coming back home was nice as well. My initial thought was that I was going to have a pretty strong research career in maternal and child nutrition in Cambodia, but my focus since I started has really been in medical education as well. I'm the course director for an online global pediatrics education course, and we've recently turned that into a virtual clerkship for the medical students as well, so I'm clerkship director for that also. It's been an interesting 3 years that have seen my focus turn a little away from where I was intending it to go when I started.
Great. Well, thank you very much for those introductions. So we'll start with our questions. So our first question is for Colby, Diana, and Jamil. When did you start the job search process, and how did you go about finding what positions were available? We can start with Colby.
Sure. So I started the job process pretty early. I would say maybe even a little bit too early, but the fellows in my program, we had seen, you know, some of them started the process a little bit later, and it seems like they were maybe not as satisfied with the first job that they found when they started that process too late. And so I jumped the gun a little bit. I started actually emailing people at the end of June of my second year and beginning of July of my third year. But I think it did help me in a way, in that I started some conversations with some of the division, you know, chiefs early on, and at least showed that I had interest in their program. I was looking for a spot that would be good for both my husband and I, and so we did kind of geographically choose cities that we felt like would offer good career opportunities for both of us. And then I initially started by talking to people in my fellowship group to see if they had contacts at any of the programs that I was looking at. If they did have contacts, then I tried to use those so that it wasn't just a completely cold email to people that I had never met. But I did do those as well. I would say the best thing that I probably did was tried to personalize the contacts that I sent to each of the programs to why I was focused on that being one of my places that I was interested to see if they had a faculty position. And I didn't just use geography. So certainly geography is a good, I mean, no one's going to fault you for saying that you have family in the area. But I would highly recommend that you don't just tell a Florida program that you want to live next to the beach or something like that. Try and make sure that you really look up some specifics of their program and are able to link that back to your interests in your career as well. get ready for a lot of emails that, that say that they are not sure if they have a faculty position open yet, especially for academic jobs, because most of the budgeting goes on in the fall for most of those programs. But that doesn't mean they're not interested. It means that truly they aren't sure if they're going to have positions available, and it's someone that you can continue to follow up with over the coming months to see if they would be interested. The one other thing to keep in mind too is that the private practice and the academic jobs go very differently. So if you interview for private practice jobs, a lot of times the turnaround for an offer on those jobs is quick. The turnaround for an offer at an academic job is not quick. That's just the fact of the matter. And so if you are looking at both of those, you want to know that if you are waiting for answers from an academic position, you may be kind of against a wall with any private jobs that you're looking at for them to get a response to an offer. I think I answered all of the questions, parts of the question there, didn't I?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Later, but I want everyone else to have a chance to talk too.
Yeah, thank you. Diana, would you like to answer the questions?
Sure, and I wholeheartedly agree with almost everything that Colby said and had a very similar process. And I think, my story was guided a lot by the fact that my husband was going to be doing a pediatric fellowship here at CHOP. And so I approached it with, I really need to, for my family, to be in this geographic area. But at the same time, and it's sort of, sometimes the happenstances of life, had already built a mentorship relationship with a really prominent neonatal health services researcher here at CHOP, and he had started to mentor me as a fellow, which may or may not have impacted my husband's fellowship job, which is a lot to say that sometimes there's like strategic decisions and conversations that you can have even years before you realize like the path you're trying to take. But I think what helped is that I also started a conversation very early on, about the same time, in about, actually, I remember reaching out to my current boss at PAS, which would have been like April or May of my second year, to say my husband just matched and I will want to be living in the Philly area and will want to minimize my commute. And I work with one of your colleagues. And so if anything becomes available, I'm very interested. And so and it was far too early for the same reasons. And I got a very similar response to, a lot of these decisions and budgeting will be decided in months to come, but keep the communication lines open. So it wasn't a yes and it wasn't a no, but it was, to me, important to start that early, to let people know, like, this is where I stand. And then I also started looking in the greater Philadelphia area. So I was trying not to put all my eggs in one basket, even though I really wanted to. But so to me, that was a key to also starting really early. And then the other part that I wanted to highlight is, once I had identified this program that I thought that would be great for many reasons, I really tried to focus in my interviews and in my early communications and definitely through my interviews about why we were such a fit for each other. What I could contribute to CHOP and what CHOP could contribute to me as an early career investigator, and why it was really a great place. And I think that was important because it helped me think through what I would, if I was able to get this position, how I would approach my time when I first got here. And I think did set me up to sort of hit the ground running when I got here. So thinking about that as I looked for programs about what I would want out of a division or a department, then also set me up for my early months as early career.
Great. Jamil?
All right. So it's hard to be the last one to answer this question because a lot of the things that both of you said apply to myself too. Actually, I remember Colby and I talking a lot about where we were trying to find jobs back in June of that year. And so I don't think you were necessarily all that early because we all were kind of in that same boat. So I sent out some feelers around June of my second year, July of my third year as well. I kind of took the same approach as both of you. Minnesota was home for me. Minnesota was also a program that could really, really strongly support what I wanted to do as a global health person. And so I wanted to reach out as early as I could to ensure that if there was a position available or going to become available, that they would know that I was interested in that particular spot. From there, it kind of just slid into a very good fit. But as Colby said, it can take a really, really long time. Even though we started these conversations in June, and I met with the division director at AAP in October, after I'd already interviewed once and then interviewed again, I didn't sign my offer letter until the end of January. And the position wasn't officially posted for, oh gosh, I don't know, about a month before that. So even though we'd had some pretty strong feelings that we were going to be coming back to Minnesota, it wasn't official until like about 7 months after I started. So I think utilizing the contacts that you can, if you know people from meetings or otherwise at other institutions, use those as a stepping stone to reach out to those programs. I also utilized my division director in fellowship quite a bit. He was very, very helpful in guiding us towards job opportunities as they were coming up. I know that my co-fellows were all quite a bit later to finding their positions, and our division director had a lot to do with helping them find the positions that they ended up with. So that's kind of all I have to add.
Okay, thanks. So we'll move right along. So our next question is for Vilmi. Many of the fellows that are listening today are entering into their first job that will require a contract. The majority, the grand majority. How did you approach contract negotiations for your first job? And did you utilize a legal expert to help you with that process?
So I will say that I feel like that's one of the most uncomfortable things that you do as part of the job process, especially when you have not had a job and you've been going through one training after the other, and all of a sudden you interview, you have offers, and then they send you this very long document and you have no idea what to do. So I think I took it a two-step process. One was figuring out and understanding that every contract is negotiable, right? We're so used to saying, okay, this is my first job. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm desperate to sign something, because you start feeling a little bit of that angst of, I started the process, like my colleague said, in June. It is January. I just got an offer letter and I'm not signing this until later. You almost feel this pressure of signing immediately and moving on. But you have to understand that you have the offer letter and then your contract comes in, and taking one step back, signing the offer letter is a way of saying you are taking that job. It is not binding, but it is kind of that interaction between yourself and the chief or whoever it is in that hospital, and then taking it to the next level with the contract. So I did have a contract lawyer look at it, because I understood that neonatology is my strength, not contract review. So you can do it a few different ways. If you have colleagues that have done this in the past, which clearly we all have, they have great connections. A lot of the lawyers have a flat rate to review it. And then I sat down and said, okay, what are the things that I need to look at? So one of the things to always keep an eye out is air miles. So your covenant, right? If you, for any reason, leave the job, there's a non-compete. So it will affect your job, your next job in the future, if there, for example, like a lot of us have a geographic location that we have to be at. If by any chance you lose that position for any reason, then there are miles where a radius, right, that you cannot practice. So understanding that it's not just Googling this hospital to another hospital, it's actually air miles, which is much less than what you anticipate. That information is something that's really important to know, because then you can negotiate those. And different hospitals have different mileage requirements, and depending if you're in Philadelphia and it's very confined, or if you're in other cities or states that you have a little bit more wiggle room. So that's something that's important, knowing that if I were to leave my job and I wanted to work in X hospital, will this contract allow that? And then, so that was one of the things that I looked at, just trying to get a little bit more used to the language. Also, things like CME money, that was very important to try to understand, will you get enough to be able to go to PAS and AAP? Are you one of the neonatologists that want to go to all the conferences? Will you have enough of that stipend to do that? And other things that you want to do, of course. Are your licenses covered? Boards, for those of us that just took our boards, is that something that is covered under your contract when you're starting a board review course, for example, if that's something that you're interested in? And then another part that's really important is trying to figure out what is it about your job that you really, really want to do. And doing that is very important to have it in your contract from the get-go. So for example, for me, it was program leadership. So I walked in going into an associate program director for a fellowship. So that's something that you want to make sure that you have protected time documented and everything really nicely laid out in your contract. The same thing goes for research, the percentage of research versus clinical that you want, and the stipulations for that research money or academic time, etc. So I would say those are the big things to look at. Of course, you can always negotiate student loans if that's something that you have. You can negotiate your relocation expenses if you're moving. And you can move across country, or you can move from one neighborhood to the next. You still can get relocation money that can be part of your contract. So those are the things that I would say, if you have a question, it's okay to ask it. You don't have to feel timid about it. What's the worst that can happen? They say no. And you say, okay, at least I tried. But if it's something that's non-negotiable, then it's very important for you to have those conversations up front with the chief of your division before you get a contract, and then you're starting to get nitpicky, right, about all of those details.
Thank you so much. I think that was really helpful to our listeners. We actually did have a question in the chat box, so I'm going to interject one question that can also be a touchy subject, but Colby and Jamil were willing to touch on it today. So the fellows are asking what kind of salary ranges, because it's tricky to talk about money and it's uncomfortable. What kind of salary ranges were your offers, or maybe those of your colleagues, and you're aware of other offers?
Sure. So, so my offers were from academic institutions, and so I do feel like you have to kind of qualify that, because there may be quite a bit of difference between what a starting range is. For the most part, the ranges for me that were offers were between 180 and 195,000 a year, and that's pretty typical from what I've heard from other colleagues that have been starting out their search. There are some that have had a little bit higher and been able to negotiate higher, but a lot of times the salary range, especially in an academic institution, is fairly restricted. It doesn't mean you can't ask, but it's fairly restricted in terms of what that block can be. The other thing to mention is all of my contracts or the offers were for a one-year contract for an academic institution that I had. And so it was something that could be renegotiated depending on kind of what your track is. We had a couple of fellows that were senior to me that had private practice groups that they joined, and each of them had a 3-year contract that had a plan for what their salary increase would be over those 3 years, and then an additional bonus structure with it. And so it does depend on the type of institution. I will also say it's frustrating. So the salary talk almost never comes up in a first interview. Sometimes it doesn't come up in a second interview either. My husband is not medical, and this drove him nuts, okay, that we like put off the money discussion for so long. Occasionally it ended up being a third phone call that it was discussed. So don't get discouraged, I guess would be my advice if you end up not having that talk as early on as you thought. And then I chatted in some other things, just kind of echoing Diana's chat about things that you might be able to try to negotiate if salary doesn't end up being one of them.
Yeah, so I only had the one offer at the University of Minnesota, and it was right around there. I was 198.5 was where I came in for that year. But what actually surprised me in the process, because I was not a very good negotiator, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I just had a very generous boss. And so we did have a very, very generous relocation package that covered all of our moving expenses from Charlottesville. We also have an extraordinarily generous retirement package, which is something that I didn't even think about when I was negotiating the contract. And there isn't much negotiation to be had, to be perfectly honest, in an academic center. But I mean, the University of Minnesota puts in 13% into a 401k for us, which is a huge amount of money. And so that didn't even cross my mind when I was in the process of figuring out where I was going to be and what my salary was going to be. The other thing to consider is whether or not there are opportunities for moonlighting, because if there are opportunities for moonlighting within your institution or within surrounding community hospitals, that can be a real nice way to take care of a house project, for example.
Thank you. If any of our panelists are willing to share anything else about that topic, please do so in the group chat, just so we can get to our other questions.
Okay. So for the next question, in terms of mentorship, can you describe some of the key elements of a successful or alternatively an unsuccessful mentor-mentee relationship? And we can start with Scott for this question and then hand it over to Vilmi and then Jamil.
Great, thanks, Pri. I think my general theme of my life is to make sure I'm picking good mentors, and in sorry, am I muted?
You were for a second there.
Sorry. I think I was very interested in like what projects were going on, and what was the most exciting science that was happening, and I quickly learned that was the absolute wrong approach. And since that time, I've always taken the approach of who is the mentor who has the skills and strengths that I need to be successful in the future. Who are the mentors who will back me 110% every day that I'm at my institution, who will advocate for me when it is time for me to get a job, who's gonna give me the resources unconditionally to make sure my project succeeds. And I think those are the people that have made an enormous difference and who have been irreplaceable in my life professionally and also personally. So I would encourage everyone, at this level, it's all the more important that you find mentors, either if you intend on staying at your institution for your first job, or you intend on leaving and going somewhere else. It's equally important to make sure you find that mentor who can fill all of those roles that I described. Because without that, I think it's very difficult. No matter how brilliant you are, it's very difficult for you to succeed.
Thank you. Vilmi, would you like to comment on that mentor question?
Absolutely. I think it's very important to find the right fit for you. I believe that the majority of the neonatologists are amazing mentors. It just depends on your personality and your style. But finding that right fit is extremely important, especially if you want to succeed. For me, it was finding that relationship, and not just once, right? I feel like you always gravitate and find that person that you connect through at different stages of your career, and maintaining those relationships are huge. I still speak with my mentors from residency. Sometimes it's just on life decisions, but especially for neonatology, and when you're getting that job, is the people that, one, like Scott said, have your back no matter what, but two, challenge you and tell you, you're all over the place, or you need to focus, or you have X, Y, and Z on the plate. What do you want to do? That push you almost to a little bit of a discomfort, right? Because that's the only way. If you're just getting someone that's telling you you're doing a great job all the time, you're not going to feel challenged. And I think that we all, in one way or another, appreciate that push, because sometimes others can see the potential in us before we can. And if all of us look back at it, we can say, oh, I totally did not see myself here, but because of this person and this person, they pushed me in this direction. So finding the right personality, but also there has to be also a little bit of discomfort in it as well, for you to be challenged in many ways. And remember that whoever is your mentor right now, it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the mentor for the rest of your career, right? It's that you continue adding those layers to make your professional and personal life even more successful.
Great.
Building, I
Jamil,
love
would
what
you
you,
like to go?
yeah, I love what you said about your mentors seeing the potential in you before you realize that you have it in yourself, because that's something that I think has been really important for me as well. You know, imposter syndrome is very real. I think anybody working in an institution is going to feel like they somehow landed there by accident, or somebody made a mistake when reviewing your CV or something. I don't know. I feel that all the time. But it's a very real thing, and having a mentor that can push you to realize your potential can be really important. And having somebody who has a lot of experience and connections is a really valuable mentor, because they can connect you to opportunities that can be really, really important, and in some ways can make or change your career path. For example, when I started, I was kind of basically offered this course directorship position because the person who had built the course knew it needed to be updated and made current, but didn't really want to do it anymore. So he passed it off to me. And this is really wonderful for somebody who's going to be going up for promotion in the next, I guess it would be 5 or 6 years now, 5 years, on an academic and education-based track. And so, you know, there are people who get presented opportunities that don't have the time to take them. And if they can find the right person to do it and they select you, it can be a really important thing. So I think a person who pushes you to the point of a little bit of discomfort is really helping you realize what you can do. And that's a really good way of putting it.
Okay, to continue along this mentorship thread, Colby and Diana, since you both changed institutions between fellowship and your first job, can you comment on whether you thought it was important to have a pre-identified mentor from day one?
Yes. So I can comment on this because I didn't have one. Okay. So I think it would have been very helpful to have someone that I truly had identified as a mentor. And I'm not actually talking about a mentor in my academic specific interests, because when I came out of fellowship, I was interested in a lot of things, and that similar to what some of the other panelists have said, has kind of transitioned over the last 3 years or so. But I feel like it's really important to have a mentor that can be a bit of your life coach as you go from that fellowship to attending role. So everyone tells you when you're a fellow that, you know, it's going to be really hard when you become a first year attending, and just wait, you know, it's going to be really stressful. And I believed them, you know, like I didn't think they were lying to me when they told me that when I was a fellow, but I don't think I completely internalized just how big of a difference it is going from always knowing there's someone that you can go to make sure that your decision was correct, to being the person that people come to see if it's a right decision. And if you're going to a new institution that has different policies, a different group of nurses, a different group of APPs, you really should try to have someone that can keep you grounded in making sure that you aren't losing focus kind of that, especially that first year that you're out. That person probably won't end up being your lifelong academic mentor. Maybe they will, but they can be the person that helps you make that transition.
I think there's so much important that Colby just said. As far as like your clinical role as a neonatologist, you absolutely need people to talk to and to fall back upon. And I would argue that you want someone at your new institution and someone that you've known for much longer that you feel really safe and comfortable around, because there's going to be many times when you doubt even the most fundamental of your knowledge, and you need to have a safe space where you can like literally turn around and be like, am I crazy, or am I misremembering, or what's going on, and feel safe to admit those vulnerabilities of your like mental and cognitive process. But you also need someone who understands how things are, because as you will see, especially if you've done all your training in one place or much of your training in one place, there's many different ways to practice neonatology, and there's a lot of questions that we don't have a firm evidence base on. And so there's going to be a lot of variation in practice. And sometimes I just need to be able to turn to someone and be like, so this is what we do here? Okay, cool, that's fine. But I just didn't know that. And I think CHOP did a really great job, because they literally assign you a seasoned attending to be sort of your clinical mentor for your first service block, and sort of expect you as someone out of fellowship to just like run your teams by them every day for the first week or so. And it felt really great to have that when I first did my first service block, because it was almost like pretending again. It was like the little training wheels of being an attending. And I slowly transitioned away from like running everything by him to running some things by him, to just now I text him when I am in one of those places. But I didn't know him as well as like the people that I texted back home in Gainesville. So definitely important to think about that from a clinical perspective. But then if I put my research hat on, then I feel like it is absolute. If you're trying to become an independent investigator and you get hired on a track that is meant to try to propel you down that path, then I think it is absolutely crucial to try to develop that relationship before you get there, in part because it will make that interview process make more sense on both sides, like I described for me. But also because if you are trying to be an independent investigator, there's, depending on your institution, and I talked a little bit about that in the chat box, but you may have a timeline and a clock within which to meet some metrics from a research perspective, and time moves much faster than you realize. So in my experience, I got hired as an instructor. I'm not yet an assistant professor, and I'm expected to get external funding within 3 years of my appointment to be able to continue down this path of trying to be an independent investigator. And 3 years sounds like a lot of time, but it's not. And so you really want to be able to have that relationship and be able to start to think about projects, transitioning from fellowship research and projects to whatever projects and research you're going to be doing, and where your science is going to be moving as faculty, to get yourself into that extramural funding position if you are in one of those quote unquote up or out institutions and environments. And there, I have found that if you're proactive about this, it seems like it's possible. We'll see, hopefully I make it, but it is possible. But I think what's helped me is that I already had that relationship with a research mentor. And so I already had things that have continued to go on through fellowship, and there was never a lag process where I wasn't producing or being involved in research projects.
Okay, thank you. So along those same lines, we're going to pull from the chat box the next question, and it's for the lifers. So what did you do to differentiate yourself? Not necessarily clinically. We have to do that in general as we move from fellowship to early career life. But how did you differentiate yourself from a research standpoint from your fellowship research mentor? And Scott was willing to share with us about this.
Yeah, happy to. I get the importance of this can't be overstated, because especially with all of the career awards, if you do intend on pursuing a clinician scientist track, and you're applying for career awards, is not only, K will fill in the number you're eligible for, or foundation career awards, lots of career awards. Everything your funding institutions want from you is to make sure that you are not only going to be successful long-term, but you're going to be successful independently long-term. And that means independently from your mentor. And people will increasingly, as you get farther and farther out from that mentee-mentor relationship formally, they're going to want to see that you're producing completely independently from your mentor. So how do you differentiate yourself? It can be hard, especially when, people on campus are always like, oh, you're so-and-so's guy, or you're so-and-so's trainee, former trainee. And it is hard to to come out from under that, especially if the person you're working for is a big personality or big name on campus. But I think that it all sort of gets back to being able to choose the mentor who you can be very real with from moment one, and say, look, this is what I'm really interested in studying. I can use the following strengths of yours to achieve this goal. And by the end, it's not going to be R01 material for you, but all of the tools that I create and all of the intellectual property I create, that will be mine. And are you okay with that? And I think it's a very important conversation to have. And once you've set those goals and expectations with your mentor, you can forge a path that is entirely your own, and then you can be your own person. At least that's how it's worked out so far for me.
Great. All right. So we'll move on to leadership questions. So our next question is for Vilmi. Can you share with us the steps to take as an early career neonatologist to be successful in achieving a leadership position that aligns with your interests?
Absolutely. So first of all, I think that it's really important to be true to yourself and know if leadership, academic leadership, for example, for me, is something that's extremely important, then choosing that job that can either, one, prepare you for that, train you for that, offer the mentorship that you need to get to that position is extremely important. But not only that, if it's something that's not offered within the institution, that they're willing to invest in you so that you are able to get that knowledge. For me, it was important, like I mentioned, in program leadership, but not only that, administrative leadership. And being very straightforward is from the get-go is very important, but also not pushy, right? Because you don't want to go to a job interview and say, I want your job. That's a bit intense. And second, you don't have the qualifications. So I think it's important to be honest in that either academic medicine, med ed, or administrative leadership is something that you're very interested in, that you want to be able to participate. What are the opportunities? Are there any courses that you can participate in? A master's program, for example, is that something that's covered within the hospital as part of the tuition, for example? So, so that's huge, but also understand that you're not going to walk in and want everything on your checklist is there, right? It's something that you will have to work very hard for and put in the effort at the beginning, so that way the reward comes afterwards. So being honest in your interest, but also being flexible in opportunities. And like Jamil mentioned, sometimes some opportunities just land on your lap and you can either say no or absolutely, and let me run with it. So I would encourage everyone, and this is something that one of my mentors taught me, is never say no immediately. Always say, I'm going to think about it and I'll get back to you. Because it allows you sometimes to kind of reflect and see, is this opportunity something that will open a path for me? Is this something that I did not see at all for me, and potentially it's great? Or is it something that I really don't want to do, but it deserves a thought? And then you are honest with yourself, but you also give that time to reflect, not only for yourself professionally, but also with your family, because with every responsibility comes time that may not be integrated right into that FTE or full-time employee position, especially in academics.
Great. So kind of along those lines of being presented with different opportunities and what to kind of think about and what to say yes or no to, when presented with a new opportunity or project as a junior faculty member, do you say yes to things that you didn't really expect to be participating in, especially if you're perceiving pressure from leaders in your institution? Or do you find it important to stay more focused in your predetermined kind of 5-year plan? and we can start with Colby and then go to Scott and Jamil. And then we have like one final question after that because we're running a little shorter on time.
I will be quick and succinct then, so we have time, definitely. So I definitely have a problem personally with the saying no thing. I think a lot of us do, and so I think that is one role that your mentor is really important in, and not necessarily leadership. So I haven't felt pressure from leadership to take on things, but I kind of feel pressure whenever anyone asks me to do something, because a lot of times everything sounds really cool, right? Like we really want to be involved in things. We really want to learn things. One of the tasks that I put for myself in my second year, because I got a little overwhelmed, is I made a list of all of the things that I was participating in, even if they were not taking up that much time. And I tried to prioritize them by the things that I was most interested in being involved in, and also the things that took up the most time. And I took that list to every meeting with my mentor so that they could go over it with me and say what they really felt like was contributing to my career. And I thought that was really helpful, and it helped me determine the things that I should scale back on, and it helped me also categorize the things that I should start saying no to. And I've gotten better at that, although it's something that I still need to work on. So find the person that can help you, that knows what your career goals are and can help you think through, is this going to further my career, and do you actually, do you really enjoy doing this? You shouldn't be adding things to your list that you don't want to do, because ultimately they're not going to make you succeed.
Go ahead, Scott, if you want to answer.
Great. So amen to all of that. I think that the one thing that's extremely tricky, and I should also say that I'm completely incapable of saying no to anything. The times I've been really pleasantly surprised recently have been times where, like, I wouldn't have necessarily predicted this would have taken me an extra step or would have gotten me in a position to succeed in a way that I couldn't otherwise. I would say for almost things that seem tedious, like writing reviews or book chapters or things with people you've never met, maybe people outside your institution. And I think these days, especially when conferences are all online and those chances to network are very limited in person, I would just recommend that you think twice and a third time before turning something down, especially if it might give you the chance to meet somebody you wouldn't have otherwise.
I think that's really great advice. And I think all of us are probably the kind of people who tend to overcommit. And it can be really hard to say no. But I'm going to provide the counterpoint that you have to be willing to say no as well, because if you do just keep saying yes to everything, your plate gets completely full, and then you get overwhelmed, and it can spiral out of control. So I actually did take a period during my third year in faculty that I just stopped saying yes. I just needed to finish up all the things that I had said yes to before, and I just stopped taking on additional roles. And I think that was really, really good for me, because now I'm in a position where things have cleared up and I can start saying yes to these, like Colby said, cool opportunities that come up within the unit. It's kind of fun. So just know your limits when you start committing to things.
That is so perfect. So we have exactly 5 minutes left. So you guys did great with your timing of your questions. That wasn't your goal, but you did wonderful. So with our final few minutes, we're going to go through in the order that you were introduced. And just if you have a brief piece of advice for those fellows who are embarking on this job search journey, what do you have to say? Colby?
I really think the biggest thing is just to try to be pretty honest with yourself about the things that you're looking to do. You can be pushed. We're people pleasers, right? So we want all of our people in fellowship and all of our mentors to be proud of us and to feel like we've done our best. And you are going to do your best, but your best might not be exactly what you anticipated it to be. It may not be in the same area. And so I just think that you do need to have a fair amount of self-reflection now, but maybe even more importantly, after you finish your first year as faculty and have really gotten your feet under you, figuring out if you're doing the things you want to do, and if you're not, who you can identify to help you go further down that track. Because it's okay for your interests and for your career goals to change even pretty dramatically after you start being an attending. And you know, the whole burnout thing is real, and it happens when you're not doing the thing that you love. So just be honest about what you want and you'll find your way.
Okay, Scott, you available to give us your thoughts?
Yes, I echo that. To be very honest with yourself, brutally honest with yourself about what you really love and what you really want, and also be very kind to yourself and realize, especially during this time, and this is such a brutal time to be looking for jobs, just to be kind to yourself and know that you know, if you're doing what you love, the universe will have a way of rewarding you, I think.
Scott took some of the words out of my mouth. What I was going to say is try to be kind to yourself, because we are overachievers and we have high expectations. And I sort of alluded to this already, but there has never been a point in my career that I have doubted my own medical knowledge more than my first years in attending. Like, think about how we felt in medical school, where you're like, I don't know anything. And then you're in attending and you're like, I know everything, except now I don't know anything again, when you're like actually in there and there's like no other attending around. And so that is normal. And I saw my husband go through it 1 year later, and I kept telling him that's normal. But we don't realize how normal it is, because in that moment you're like, I should know this. I should know what to do and I should not need help. And this is just another developmental stage of our career. So have those people that you can text even when you're on call at 1 a.m. You know, it's okay. Like, you need to have that outlet, because you're gonna want to like sit and read a textbook at 1 a.m. even though you admitted 10 of those cases before in your fellowship. I still remember the palpitations I had the first time I admitted a very, very sick, unstable baby by myself at night as the attending. I want to normalize that experience, because I don't think we talk about those feelings enough. And so just find your village and find your people that can help you through that developmental stage.
I would also agree with all of my colleagues, but I would say be flexible. This job search is brutal. It feels like, okay, I've done all of this training, I'm gonna get my perfect job. And what you think is perfect might not be what you get at the beginning. But as things progress and as your interests change, and as opportunities open, you will find your path. It will be okay. And from a clinical perspective, I think that just being humble is important, knowing your limitations and saying, I'm in a bind right now, and although I think I know what I'm doing, at the end of the day, if you have the patient's best interest at heart, you will do what's right for your patient, which will be finding that sounding board from another colleague. That's extremely important. And once you find that mentor that has almost your well-being and your career almost more important than their own, that's when you've found like gold in terms of mentorship. And that's kind of what we aspire to be when we're mentoring all of you guys.
I guess I get to close this out. So I also want to say that sometimes you do land the job that you wanted and it feels really good. And that does happen too. So, you know, it can happen. It's, I guess, one way to put that. For people who are transitioning from one institution to another, ask a lot of questions. Ask, because everything is going to be different than what you're used to. I know that I actually sat down with our medical director when I started here, and we basically talked through all of the controversial topics in neonatology, which is, you know, all of them. Like, how did you do this at Virginia? How did you do that at Virginia? How did you do this? And we kind of sat down and kind of went through all of the differences, and it was like, mind-blowing how different everything was. So be prepared to relearn everything too, and to appreciate that everything that you learned in fellowship isn't necessarily the gospel of neonatology. So be flexible, and try to find that person who you can call. Our medical director basically opened the door for all the new faculty who started at the same time, said, call me anytime, any day, if you have a question or concern or anything. So having that invitation from somebody can be really, really welcoming when you're starting with a new group.
Great. Well, that was really wonderful. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for taking the time to share from their recent experiences as junior faculty for the benefit of all of our TECaN members and their fellowships. Allie and I would also like to thank the audience on behalf of the TECaN Exec Council for your participation today. And as a reminder, the panelists have addressed a lot of other topics that you told us were important to you as fellows, such as networking, staying up to date on the literature, and some interview tips. And the link, I just reshared that in the chat box, so the link is there.
Okay, guys, this is the conclusion of our 4-part TECaN ONTPD job search series. Recordings of all sessions have been or will be distributed via the listserv, the TECaN listserv. If you're not already receiving emails on our listserv, please sign up under membership. I've got some websites and an email that I'll share with you. There it is. So there is a TECaN website, aap.org/TECaN. And if you have really enjoyed participating in this type of forum and you have an idea that we could have a discussion about or do an educational series about like this, please do email us at tcan@aap.org. We want to say thank you to the TECaN ONTPD organizing committee, and I've listed those participants here, and it's really been great to talk to all of you today. So that's it for us. Everyone have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much, guys. Good luck.
Thanks all. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oops, sorry. Thanks, Allie and Bree. Really nice job moderating.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, it was fun. I'm just trying to read through the comments to make sure we didn't miss anything.
I'm sure we did. Yeah, thank you for letting us do it. It was really a great opportunity for us too.
Yeah.
Now we got to plan next year's version.
So hopefully those out there, we can pick the brains of those listening to see. It's always, sometimes our best ideas come from our TECaN members on just things that they think would be beneficial. So we'll see if what we can come up with.
Yep, I think that like a survey to the membership and maybe actually to the section chiefs might be useful. The section chiefs reached out and asked if we could do speed dating, which filled me a little bit with fear, but just in terms of organizing it. But I actually think that in principle, it's a really good idea. So we'll see if that's a doable thing, but it would be nice to be able to match out applicants with section heads or private practice groups to match interests. But we'll see.
Yeah.
Lots of good things coming.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's good to talk to you. Thank you for your help.
Yep, no problem. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye, Allie. See you later.